Section 1. You will hear someone being asked their opinion of a new television station. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 4.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you have time to answer a few questions?
What's it about?
We're doing some market research for a new television channel starting in 2 years' time.
Okay, why not?
Lovely. We'll just work through this form. And if we could start with some personal background information?
Sure.
Right. If I could just have your age?
35.
Right. Great. And your job?
Systems analyst. But for the form, I don't know whether it would count as professional or business or what.
What do you think?
Okay, it's more like business.
Fine. And would you mind my asking about your salary, or we can leave it blank?
No, I don't mind. It's 40,000 a year.
Oh, thank you. Right. About your current watching habits. What would you say is your main reason for watching TV?
Well, at work, I tend to read for information and what have you, so I'd say that with TV, it probably just helps me relax and unwind.
Fine. And how many hours a day, on average, do you watch TV?
Not a lot, really. I should say just over an hour.
You now have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 5 to 10.
So what are the 2 main times of the day that you watch TV?
Well, a little around breakfast time, and then it tends to be really late, 11 or even midnight, when I finish work.
And what sort of programs do you go for?
Some news bulletins, but I also really like to put my feet up with some of the old comedy shows.
Fine. And turning to the new channel, which type of programs would you like to see more of?
Well, I certainly don't think we need any more factual programs, like news and documentaries. I think we need more about things like local information, providing a service for the community. And in the same vein, perhaps more for younger viewers. Good quality stuff.
Uh-huh. And if you had to give the new directors some specific advice when they set up the channel, what advice would you give them?
I think I'd advise them to pay a lot of attention to the quality of the actual broadcast. The sound system. People are very fussy these days about that. And in general, I think they ought to do lots more of these kinds of interview, talking with their potential customers.
Oh, I'm glad you think it's valuable.
Certainly, yeah.
Good. Okay. This will be a commercial channel, of course, but how often do you think it is tolerable to have adverts?
Well, out of that list, I'd say every quarter of an hour. I don't think we can complain about that, as long as they don't last for 10 minutes each time.
Quite. And would you be willing to attend any of our special promotions for the new channel?
Yes, I'd be very happy to, as long as they're held here in my area.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. And finally, may we put you on our mailing list?
Well, I'd prefer not, except for the information about the promotion you mentioned.
Can I have your name and address?
Of course. Here's my card.
Oh, lovely. And thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you.
Yes, indeed. Thanks.
That is the end of Section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a representative from a holiday company called PS Camping giving a talk about the holidays the company organises. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 16.
Thank you all for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about PS Camping, let me start by giving you some background information about the company. The company started 25 years ago. It actually opened as a retail chain selling camping equipment, and then, 20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays. The company grew rapidly and has been providing holidays in continental Europe for the last 15 years. If you book a camping holiday with us, you'll have a choice of over 300 sites. In Italy, we now have some 64 sites that we either own or have exclusive use of. France is where we have the majority of sites, and we currently have a project to expand into Switzerland. We also have a number of sites in northern Spain, particularly in the mountainous region of Picos de Europa. We've upgraded all these Spanish sites and improved them considerably from their original 3-star rating. We believe our holidays offer superb facilities for the whole family. Parents who want their children to be fully occupied for all or part of the day can take advantage of our children's activities. These are organised by our well-qualified and enthusiastic staff. Each day kicks off with a sports match, perhaps football or volleyball, followed by an hour of drama for everyone. This may include singing or dancing, mime or other activities. In the afternoon, there's a different art activity for each day of the week, including a poster competition or model making. What's more, our sites are truly child-friendly, and with this in mind, we operate a no-noise rule in the evenings. Children's evening activities usually finish at 9:30 or occasionally 10, and from 10:30, holidaymakers are expected to be quiet in the areas where there are tents. We want nothing to go wrong on a PS Camping holiday, but if it does, we also want all our customers to be insured. If you haven't organised an annual insurance policy of your own, you'll need to take out the low-cost cover we offer, and we require that you arrange this when you make your holiday reservation. There are many advantages to choosing PS Camping and to recommending it to others. As a regular customer, you'll be kept informed of special offers, and your friends can benefit from 10% off their holiday, or book a luxury tent for the price of a standard one. In return, we'll send you a thank you present, which you can choose from a list of high-quality items.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
When it comes to our tents, these are equipped to the highest standard. We really do think of every essential detail, from an oven and cooking rings fuelled by bottled gas to mirrors in the bedroom areas. If you don't want to cook indoors, you can borrow a barbecue if you ask in advance for one to be made available. And there's even a picnic blanket to sit on outside your tent. Inside, a box of games and toys can be found, and children's tents can be hired if required. All tents have a fridge, and if you want to spend the day on the beach, for example, ask for a specially designed PS Camping cool box, which will keep your food and drinks chilled. There are excellent washing facilities at all our sites, with washing machines and clothes lines in the central areas, along with mops and buckets in case your tent needs cleaning during your stay. All sites have a cafe and/or a shop for those who'd rather eat in than dine at a local restaurant.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3. You will hear 2 veterinary science students called Diana and Tim discussing their work placements and their course modules. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
So, Tim, we have to do a short summary of our work experience on a farm.
Right. My farm was great, but arranging the work experience was hard. One problem was it was miles away and I don't drive. And also, I'd really wanted a placement for a month, but I could only get one for 2 weeks.
I was lucky. The farmer let me stay on the farm, so I didn't have to travel. But finding the right sort of farm to apply to wasn't easy.
No, they don't seem to have websites, do they? I found mine through a friend of my mother's, but it wasn't easy.
No.
My farm was mostly livestock, especially sheep. I really enjoyed helping out with them. I was up most of one night helping a sheep deliver a lamb.
On your own?
No, the farmer was there, and he told me what to do. It wasn't a straightforward birth, but I managed. It was a great feeling to see the lamb stagger to its feet and start feeding almost straight away, and to know that it was okay. Then another time, a lamb had broken its leg, and they got the vet in to set it, and he talked me through what he was doing. That was really useful.
Yes, my farm had sheep too. The farm was in a valley and they had a lowland breed called Suffolks, although the farmer said they'd had other breeds in the past.
So were they bred for their meat?
Mostly, yes. They're quite big and solid.
My farm was up in the hills, and they had a different breed of sheep. They were Cheviots.
Oh, I heard their wool's really sought after.
Yes, it's very hard wearing, and they use it for carpets.
Right.
I was interested in the amount of supplements they add to animals' feed nowadays. Like, even the chickens got extra vitamins and electrolytes in their feed.
Yes, I found that too. And they're not cheap. But my farmer said some are overpriced for what they are, and he didn't give them as a matter of routine, just at times when the chickens seemed to particularly require them.
Yes, mine said the same. He said certain breeds of chickens might need more supplements than the others, but the cheap and expensive ones are all basically the same. So, did your farm have any other livestock, Diana?
Yes, dairy cows. I made a really embarrassing mistake when I was working in the milk shed. Some cows had been treated with antibiotics, so their milk wasn't suitable for human consumption, and it had to be put in a separate container. But I got mixed up, and I poured some milk from the wrong cow in with the milk for humans, so the whole lot had to be thrown away. The farmer wasn't too happy with me.
I asked my farmer how much he depended on the vet to deal with health problems. I'd read reports that the livestock's health is being affected as farmers are under pressure to increase production. Well, he didn't agree with that, but he said that actually some of the stuff the vets do, like minor operations, he'd be quite capable of doing himself.
Yeah, my farmer said the same, but he reckons vet skills are still needed.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Now we've got to give a bit of feedback about last term's modules. Just short comments, apparently. Shall we do that now?
OK, so medical terminology.
Well, my heart sank when I saw that, especially right at the beginning of the course, and I did struggle with it.
I thought it'd be hard, but actually I found it all quite straightforward. What did you think about diet and nutrition?
OK, I suppose.
Do you remember what they told us about pet food and the fact that there's such limited checking into whether or not it's contaminated? I mean, in comparison with the checks on food for humans, I thought that was terrible.
I think the module that really impressed me was the animal disease one, when we looked at domesticated animals in different parts of the world, like camels and water buffalo and alpaca. The economies of so many countries depend on these, but scientists don't know much about the diseases that affect them.
Yes. I thought they'd know a lot about ways of controlling and eradicating those diseases, but that's not the case at all. I loved the wildlife medication unit. Things like helping birds that have been caught in oil spills. That's something I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, I thought I might write my dissertation on something connected with that.
Right. So, actually, I was thinking something along the same lines.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 3.
Section 4. You will hear a student called Shona giving a presentation on her research report. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been doing some research into what people in Britain think of doctors, the ones who work in general practice, the first call for medical care, and comparing this with the situation in a couple of other countries. I want to talk about the rationale behind what I decided to do. Now, I had to set up my program of research in 3 different countries, so I approached postgraduates in my field in overseas departments, contacting them by email to organize things for me at their end. I thought I would have trouble recruiting help, but in fact, everyone was very willing, and sometimes their tutors got involved too. I had to give my helpers clear instructions about what kind of sample population I wanted them to use. I decided that people under 18 should be excluded because most of them are students or looking for their first job. And also I decided at this stage just to focus on men who were in employment and set up something for people who didn't have jobs and for employed women later on as a separate investigation. I specifically wanted to do a questionnaire and interviews with a focus group. With the questionnaire, rather than limiting it to one specific point, I wanted to include as much variety as possible. I know questionnaires are a very controlled way to do things, but I thought I could do taped interviews later on to counteract the effects of this. And the focus group may also prove useful in future by targeting subjects I can easily return to, as the participants tend to be more involved. So I'm just collating the results now. At the moment, it looks as if, in the UK, despite the fact that newspapers continually report that people are unhappy with medical care, in fact, it is mainly the 3rd level of care, which takes place in hospitals, that they are worried about. Government reforms have been proposed at all levels, and although their success is not guaranteed, long-term hospital care is in fact probably less of an issue than the media would have us believe. However, I've still got quite a bit of data to look at. Certainly, I will need to do more far-reaching research than I had anticipated in order to establish if people want extra medical staff invested in the community, or if they want care to revert to fewer but larger key medical units. The solution may well be something that can be easily implemented by those responsible in local government, with central government support, of course. This first stage has proved very valuable, though. I was surprised by how willing most of the subjects were to get involved in the project. I had expected some unwillingness to answer questions honestly, but I was taken aback and rather concerned that something I thought I'd set up very well didn't necessarily seem that way to everyone in my own department. I thought you might also be interested in some of the problems I encountered in collecting my data. There were odd cases that threw me. One of the subjects who I had approached while he was out shopping in town decided to pull out when it came to the 2nd round. It was a shame, as it was someone who I would like to have interviewed more closely. And one of the first-year students I interviewed wanted reassurance that no names would be traceable from the answers. I was so surprised, because they think nothing of telling you about themselves and their opinions in seminar groups. Then one of the people that I worked with got a bit funny. The questions were quite personal, and one minute he said he'd do it, then the next day he wouldn't. And in the end, he did do it. It's hard not to get angry in that situation, but I tried to keep focused on the overall picture in order to stay calm. The most bizarre case was a telephone interview I did with a teacher at a university in France. He answered all my questions in great detail, but then when I asked how much access he had to dangerous substances, he wouldn't tell me exactly what his work involved. It was a real eye-opener.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.